In the headlines, prospects of restarting the six-party nuclear talks gaining traction. South Korea shows more flexibility to the idea, saying North Korea only needs to show sincerity. Korea's third quarter gross national income logs the slowest growth in 2.5 years. And protests erupt in the U.S. in the wake of a grand jury decision not to indict a white policeman for chokeholding an unarmed black man to death. Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News, everyone. Coming to you live from Seoul, I am Kang Tae-ri. Will the six-party nuclear disarmament talks resume? That's a question that's been on repeat ever since the talks were suspended back in 2008. South Korea says it's willing to talk again as long as North Korea is serious. Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
South Korea is ready to return to the six-party nuclear talks. All North Korea has to do is show that it's serious about giving up its nuclear weapons. Following talks with its Russian counterpart in Moscow on Wednesday, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Hwang Sung-hee said the five parties, including Russia and China, agree on the need for some preconditions for the multilateral dialogue. That, however, doesn't mean the North must take specific steps before returning to the negotiating table. Hwang said that beginning the talks without North Korea showing a sincere attitude about denuclearization would be meaningless. He added Pyongyang must show a willingness to engage in a constructive dialogue. The multilateral denuclearization talks involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia haven't been held since late 2008. But a recent flurry of diplomatic activity among the six parties has fueled hopes of getting the ball rolling again. Washington's new special representative for North Korea policy, Sung Kim, will meet with Hwang in Seoul on Friday as part of a three-nation trip that also takes him to Japan and China. This while North Korean officials and American security experts are reportedly arranging a meeting in Singapore next month. Diplomatic sources say North Korea's chief nuclear negotiator Lee Yong-ho and former U.S. nuclear envoy Stephen Bosworth are among the likely attendees. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
And now on to the joint railway project involving the two Koreas and Russia. Moscow is reportedly to hold a majority 51% stake of the project, and South Korea is taking the remaining 49%. The three-way trade deal involves delivering coal from the Russian station of Hasan to the North Korean port of Najin on a 54-kilometer railway, and then to the South Korean port city of Pohang by sea. The South Korean consortium is expected to ink a formal contract with Russia next year. A lot of speculation brewing regarding North Korea's involvement in the recent hacking into Sony Pictures' system. Sony, for now, has denied a report that said it's soon to point fingers at North Korea. Kwon Soo-ah tells us more.
The cyber attack on Sony Pictures has turned into an international case of who done it, but many accusing fingers have been pointing squarely in North Korea's direction. Raising those suspicions a notch, popular tech blog Recode reported Wednesday that Sony will name North Korea as the source of the hacking attack. Highly destructive malware knocked out the company's computer systems for over a week and leaked a massive amount of data. Citing two sources close to the probe, the blog said details are being finalized and an official announcement will come very soon. But what came soon after that was a report by the Associated Press that said Sony has not yet reached any conclusions. The news agency says it received a text message from a Sony spokesperson who said the investigation is ongoing and that Recode's report was not accurate. North Korea is suspected in the hacking attack as it wants to stop Sony from releasing its comedy film called The Interview that depicts two American journalists sent to the North to assassinate leader Kim Jong-un. That movie, however, was not one of 5 DVD screeners leaked online. But a number of security experts doubt the hacker group that identified itself as the Guardians of Peace has something to do with North Korea, despite earlier reports that Korean code was found inside the hackers' malware. Some even speculate the attack may have been carried out by a disgruntled employee. Meanwhile, Voice of America says a North Korean envoy who spoke on anonymity told them that, quote, linking North Korea to the Sony hacking is another fabrication targeting the country. This is the first denial to come out of the North, as the regime had earlier been quoted as saying wait and see in regards to questions about their involvement. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye has made preparing for unification of the two Koreas one of her priorities for her presidency. Then where do average South Koreans stand on the idea? A recent survey suggests that a majority of the South Korean people are behind this drive, saying unification of the peninsula is needed. Our Kim Min-ji tells us more.
Unification of the two Koreas would be a bonanza. Words spoken by the South Korean president. But what do average South Koreans think? Believe it or not, 7 in 10 people say we need unification. This according to a survey by the Seoul-based Korea Institute for National Unification on 1,000 people nationwide. Then why do they think unification is needed? Nearly 40% of respondents said it was because North and South Koreans belong to the same race. Eliminating the threat of war came in second, followed by reuniting families separated by the Korean War and becoming an advanced nation. While not many South Koreans see unification as an advantage to themselves as an individual, they believe that it would be a boon for the country as a whole. If and when the two Koreas do become one, the respondents said their top agenda should be working to achieve greater economic growth. Experts say the GDP of a unified Korea could reach $70,000 by 2050, the second highest among G20 nations. While the report shows public sentiment is largely behind unification, many South Koreans were still apprehensive when it came to the idea of moving to the North for work or marriage, indicating there is still a way to go before they feel totally comfortable about their northern neighbors. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
The bodies of 4 more victims in the sinking of a Korean fishing vessel off Russia's far eastern coast were recovered on this Thursday. Seoul's Foreign Ministry confirmed today 16 deaths in the disaster, with 37 still missing. Saju Industries, the ship's owner, citing communications records between the sunken Oryong vessel and other ships, said the boat appeared to have lost balance after water flooded in and blocked the drain. As the search and rescue operations continue, South Korea will send 2 maritime surveillance aircraft and 1 5,000-ton patrol ship to the site. The ministry says the ship will depart Friday afternoon and that it will take about 9 days for it to arrive on the scene. While the overall Korean economy continues on the path to a moderate recovery, the growth in income is not keeping pace. The figure did rise in the third quarter, but it was at its slowest pace in well over 2 years. Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
Korea has posted its slowest growth in income in 2.5 years. The Bank of Korea says the national income edged up 0.3% in real terms in the third quarter from the previous one, the lowest expansion since the first quarter of 2012. The central bank attributes the slower growth to worsening trade conditions, with export prices falling faster than import prices.
Prices of outbound shipments dropped while prices of IT products, which are one of Korea's major export items, fell.
But experts say next quarter income figures could expand at a faster pace than the third quarter due to falling global oil prices.
Oil prices dropped a lot in the fourth quarter, so trade conditions are likely to improve in the October to December period.
Overall economic activities remain on a recovery track as the country's gross domestic product grew 0.9% in the July to September period from the previous quarter. The third quarter figure matches an estimate made in late October and stands similar to the roughly 1% growth posted a year earlier. It also marks an improvement from 0.5% growth in the second quarter. From a year earlier, however, the Korean economy grew 3.2% last quarter, slowing from 3.5% growth in the second quarter. Key indicators also point to a still sluggish economy, with facility investments down 0.5% on quarter and exports falling more than 2% in the third quarter from a quarter earlier. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
A local institute says next year could be a banner year for Korean exports, as at least 3 free trade agreements are expected to take effect. But some say it may not be enough to keep the Korean economy rolling. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
Korean exports are expected to exceed an all-time high of $600 billion next year, a 4.3% increase from this year. That's according to the Institute for International Trade. In its latest report, it says automobile exports in particular will increase by nearly 4% to $51.5 billion, boosted by free trade agreements with Colombia, Australia, and Canada that are expected to take effect in 2015. Exports of semiconductors are forecast to grow by 6% for similar reasons.
Albeit gradually, Korean exports are expected to record positive growth next year as trade conditions improve and because there will be more working days compared to this year.
However, some experts say the 4.3% increase in exports won't be enough to boost the Korean economy.
Korea can't be satisfied with a less than 5% growth projected for next year. The rate of increase used to be in the double digits, and is merely a quarter of that now. But the dependence on exports is still high.
The researcher adds the Korean government has to do more to mitigate external risks that could affect exports. He says Korea needs to diversify its export routes and rely less on the Chinese market, which currently makes up a quarter of Korea's total exports.
The Chinese economy is forecast to head into slow growth, less than the previously projected 7%, as the Chinese government is less and less able to control and regulate its market economy compared to previous years.
The researcher says additional interest rate cuts by the Bank of Korea are imperative to keep the local currency appreciating against the weakening Japanese yen. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
So in the process of reforming the Korean economy and reducing the heavy dependence on exports, the Korean government has been stressing the importance of foreign direct investment. And to push this drive, it's looking to Korea's free trade, free economic zones, that is, to pull them in. Our Song Ji-sun has this report.
To attract more foreign direct investment, Korea has established 8 free economic zones over the past dozen years, with their total area amounting to 330 square kilometers, or half the size of Singapore. This one in Incheon was the first to be set up in 2003 and is the biggest of the 8. Foreign investors can receive tax exemptions and incentives when setting up their businesses in these free economic zones. BMW is one of many enjoying the benefits since building its first driving center in Asia at Incheon.
It took years to choose the location through multiple feasibility tests, and we are fully satisfied with our decision. It's close to the capital and the metropolitan area. It's close to the airport, which enables us to provide maintenance service when our clients fly out.
Korea seeks to become the center of East Asia in terms of investment by attracting more FDI in the 8 free economic zones. But further deregulation is needed to fight rising competition within the region, as China and Taiwan also launched similar free trade zones last year.
FDI coming into Korea, if you go back to 2003, it's gone up by about a factor of 3. So it's good progress, roughly on a par with other countries in Asia, but good, solid progress. The competition is there, though. I mean, I think that's key. Korea is not alone in doing this.
The researcher also points out that inefficiencies in labor and financial markets are slowing things down, while Korea's infrastructure and high level of education stand out as advantages compared to its global competitors. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Last-minute touches are being put on a plant in Korea's southern port city of Busan that's set to open in less than a month from now. This special facility will provide almost 50,000 tons of drinking water for the city every day, and that drinking water will come from the sea. For more on the country's first desalination plant, here is our Connie Lee.
It's this seawater surrounding Korea's southern coast that's being turned into fresh, drinkable water. Korea now has its very first desalination plant built and ready to go for full operation starting in January. Located in the southern port city of Busan, the $175 million plant can pump in about 100,000 tons of water per day from the ocean and remove the salt and turn it into 45,000 tons of fresh water, enough for about 150,000 residents in the city. This high-tech facility was built by Korea's very own Tusan Heavy Industries and Construction, currently the #1 leader in the desalination plant market.
Our company has been building these plants and working on desalination technology for about 40 years now. We built this one to help expand our overseas market and prepare for future water shortages.
The purified water has been certified as safe to drink by the Busan Water Authority, and the cost for consumers will be the same as fresh water from other sources. So is Korea facing a water shortage? Well, not right now, but potentially yes. According to a recent UN report, by the year 2030, nearly half of the global population will face water shortages due to demand exceeding water supply.
The world is headed towards water shortages. Desalination plants are one way to fight water scarcity. And in the past 2 to 3 years, the number of these plants has grown tenfold.
There are currently more than 16,000 desalination plants worldwide, and in the face of water scarcity, that number is expected to increase in the years to come. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News, Busan.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets of New York in protest against a grand jury decision not to press charges against a white police officer and the death of an unarmed black man. And for more, Paul Lee is joining us from the News Center. Paul, video footage posted online shows that this man being put into a stranglehold by the officer, a practice that has been banned by the New York Police Department.
That's right, and the no indictment verdict for Officer Daniel Botelho has only fueled the public outrage sparked by the Michael Brown case in Ferguson. Police have arrested at least 30 people, with reports of rallies erupting from Times Square and Grand Central Station to the streets of Harlem. This as the U.S. Justice Department said it would launch a federal civil rights investigation into the death of 43-year-old Eric Gardner. Our Shin Se-min has this report.
If you do not remove yourself from the roadway, you will be placed under arrest.
There were 30 arrests in Manhattan throughout night as protesters marched the city, just as others did in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and even in San Francisco.
The system isn't really built to help anybody out. They're not indicting anybody.
People have to know that people care and that it's not okay. And
this after a grand jury in New York announced that it would not be indicting a white NYPD officer in the death of an unarmed black man. The victim, Eric Garner, was stopped by Officer Daniel Pantaleo on suspicion of selling cigarettes illegally on Staten Island in July. In video of the incident, the officer is seen using a chokehold on Garner, a technique forbidden under the NYPD's patrol manual. Minutes later, Garner was dead of a heart attack. The decision in New York comes less than 2 weeks after a grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri decided not to indict Officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of an unarmed black teen, Michael Brown. President Obama called for change.
I'm not interested in talk, I'm interested in action, and I am absolutely committed as President of the United States to making sure that we have a country in which everybody believes in the core principle that we are equal under the law.
Just as with the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, the Department of Justice said it plans to open an investigation to determine whether Eric Garner's civil rights were violated. Shin Sae-min, ARIRANG News.
And turning to other major news in the U.S., the scientists at NASA are counting down to a test flight of an American spaceship that will fly astronauts beyond Earth's orbit for the first time in more than 40 years. How much time is left on the clock?
Well, we're at around T-minus 40 minutes before the Orion spacecraft blasts off from Cape Canaveral in what many are hoping will mark an important milestone for the future manned missions to the Moon and even Mars. The unmanned capsule built by Lockheed Martin will lift off to space from the historic Air Force Station on Florida's coast on Thursday morning. The 4-hour test flight is aimed at seeing how well the Orion's heat shield can withstand temperatures of over 2,200 degrees Celsius before it returns to Earth in the Pacific Ocean.
Tomorrow morning, you're going to see us press harder than we've pressed before, because for the first time in more than 40 years, this nation is going to launch a spacecraft intended to carry humans beyond low Earth orbit. That's a big deal.
The current timetable shows astronauts will join Orion's third flight in 2021, with the ultimate goal of sending the first human expedition crew to Mars. Thursday's test flight comes after 2 failed launches last month, one of them deadly. But NASA says the risks are well worth the rewards.
And moving down to Peru, top government officials and leading scientists have gathered for the UN's climate change conference, which kicked off this week. The big announcement that we heard today, Paul, is that the world is on track to see its hottest year on record.
That's right. The UN Weather Agency said Wednesday that the global average temperature in the first 10 months of this year was 0.57 Celsius above the average of 14 degrees between 1961 and 1990. The agency warns that the new figures indicate a much more longer-term trend of global warming. However, skeptics of man-made climate change have often noted that temperatures have not risen much since 1998, despite a surge in greenhouse gas emissions. But Christiana Figueres, the head of the Climate Change Secretariat, said the change is clear.
The heat is being absorbed by the oceans. There is no doubt that the ocean continues to warm, and that on a very, very consistent basis. And what it is doing, frankly, is doing us a little favor. They are absorbing the heat that could have gone to the land and paying the price.
The new report also showed ocean temperatures hitting a new record, while land temperatures clocked in at the 5th highest on record. While countries like the U.S. and Canada were struck with early winter-like conditions, countries in the southern hemisphere such as Australia, Argentina, and South Africa experienced extreme heat waves.
And of course, the countdown to Christmas has officially kicked off in New York, with the city's most famous tree being lit up in Rockefeller Center. This is, of course, one of the most popular holiday affairs in the Big Apple. Give us a picture of the festivities.
Well, the 85-foot-tall Rockefeller Christmas tree was decorated this year with over 45,000 bright LED lights strung over 8 kilometers of wire. And at the top of New York City's holiday centerpiece is a stunning crystal star. The 82nd annual tree lighting ceremony was broadcast live on the U.S. television network NBC on Wednesday night. The event featured live performances by artists such as Mariah Carey, Darius Rucker, and Grammy Award-winning singer LeAnn Rimes.
It's so beautiful, and you know, it's just festive. This kind of kicks off the whole season for a lot of people, and to be here in New York, I'm coming here since I was a kid, and have family, that extended family that lives here. So I used to come down and have seen all this and been around it, but I've never actually seen the tree lit in person. So it's kind of crazy to stand below it and like look up, and there's this massive thing. You can't even see the top of the tree when you're under it. So it's fantastic.
The 13-ton Norway spruce was first planted in 1915 by American banker and philanthropist John D. Rockefeller, and since attracted thousands of people from around the world every year as a symbol of the holiday season. Charity?
It's already that time of the year. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much, Paul, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. And that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.